Hi, and welcome to Puppetize Live. I'm James Pogren, a senior software engineer here at Puppet. In this session, we'll see how to use the Puppet VSCode extension to debug a Puppet manifest. Yep, you heard that right. We can debug a Puppet manifest just like you would debug a Node.js, C# or Go app in Visual Studio Code. This feature is still experimental, so there are some debugging workflows that we don't support yet. You must be thinking there's a catch, right? Well, yeah, I did say it's experimental. Implementing a debugger is no small task, and we're still working on it. We add new parts and find new edge cases, but you get a fair amount out of the box right now. Before we get started, how did you debug manifests before? Let's start a new VS Code window with an example manifest and explore what we get. Here we have a relatively simple Puppet manifest. You'll notice that we have variables put into notify blocks in order to see what their value is at the point in the call stack, and we add notifies inside the iterators in order to see where we are inside an array. Pretty standard stuff. And to top it off, we would run Puppet with the debug flag in order to see where things go, like this. Not very friendly output bounces by very fast, and everything dies in an error. Well, we're going to have to open up our editor and see where this file is, and then remember where the line number is in the column, and then go back and forth with this because we forgot once already. And yeah, I think we can do better than this. So let's go back to the editor. We're going to add a breakpoint over at the notify, and I think we'll add another one with anything with alert in it. Now that we have breakpoints, I'll hit F5 and launch the debugger. But instead of the debugger, we get a launch configuration. In Visual Studio Code, debuggers are configured using launch configurations. Our Puppet extension created one for us, so you wouldn't have to do it yourself. Keep in mind the no-op. We'll come back to this in a minute. So now that we have our launch configuration, we'll go back to our manifest and hit F5 again. Now remember that error? Well, instead of having to look at a command line and go back and forth between the editor and not, we get a nice huge red error message right in front of us with the line that it happened on highlighted and our nice descriptive error message right here. So instead of having to bounce back and forth, search through files, go through a bunch of incantations, we are at our error and we know what we need to do to fix it. So we'll stop our debugger and we will enter in a title. We'll hit F5 again and start our debugger. And now we've hit our breakpoint. If you've ever used a debugger before in VS Code, then you're familiar with the Debug Toolbar. If not, there's Variables View, Call Stack View, and the Breakpoint View. I'll go over each one and what they offer. Now, as I was talking, you noticed that it compiled and started evaluating the code and then stopped on our breakpoint. You might have noticed that we have actual Puppet code here, and when you execute Puppet code, you're actually executing code, unless you specified the no-op value. And that's back on our launch configuration, we specified no-op true, so that we didn't actually execute anything as we're trying to debug our manifest. If you actually want to debug an execution, then you would just switch it to false in your configuration file. So now that we've stopped on our breakpoint, we can see that we can do line, function, and exception breakpoints, but not conditions on those breakpoints. That means you can create breakpoints for the debugger to hit, but you can't put a condition on when those breakpoints trigger. In the variable view, we have everything available to see at the current breakpoint. The variables we see here are also at the top stack frame, which is the current limitation the debugger has. So we're also able to see everything in the main class as well as the demo class in the first class. In the main class, we can see a bunch of factor information here, which is useful in evaluating what variables and other environmental information we have. Let's go minimize all of this and move on to the call stack view. Now the call stack view shows us exactly where in the stack we are. This is useful because you can click on each of the parts of the stack and move to that part in the manifest. We'll keep over here at the top of the stack because that's just where we are in our execution point. Now as we step through the evaluation, our scopes change and the call stack and variable views update. We can step into and out of each breakpoint. We can still hover over variables and see their values as we go along. Can keep going, and iteration, and we hit our next breakpoint. So that's the Puppet debugger. Let's hit continue to finish our execution, and we still get all of the output that we would have if we ran this from the command line. So we get the best of both worlds. I hope you found the new experimental debugger useful and are as eager as we are to use it. Check out the other Puppet VSCode Puppetize live talks for ways on using the PDK with VSCode and developing manifests on different platforms. Thanks for watching.